Hey guys, Andrew here with Ambient Endeavors. Welcome back. And if you've been around social media at all in the last couple weeks, you probably realized that Strymon released a new pedal. They were kind enough to send one over, and we're checking out the Cloudburst today. It's kind of silly, you know, how many opinions and thoughts and emotions come out when a company like Strymon puts out a new pedal. I was seeing videos of people that hadn't even played the pedal comparing it and critiquing it to other pedals, and so we're not going to do that, but we're going to check out this pedal in depth and kind of compare it with the other two Strymon pedals that I have in the studio, the Flint and the BigSky, and try and answer the question, which one am I going to pick? Which one is for me? Perhaps which one is for you if you're looking for a new reverb and Strymon is on the list. So we'll start by walking through the specs of the new Cloudburst, then we'll hit some sound samples and then come back and share some thoughts and opinions trying to answer that question. So Cloudburst, not surprisingly, is kind of an evolution of the Cloud algorithm from BigSky. They put it in a really nice compact form factor here. It's a little bit shorter than the Volante and the other two-button pedals from Strymon, which I find a little bit interesting if you're putting them side by side on a board. But nonetheless, it's small, it's compact, and they have a really nice feature set in this product. So you get stereo ins and outs with the toggle to select that, stereo or mono. You have expression or MIDI in over TRS, which is great. And then you have some really great controls on the front. You've got decay, mix, traditional reverb controls. And what they did with Cloudburst is tried to make it really dynamic and responsive through the sweeps of the knob. So at lower decay settings, you get more subtle sort of room type reverb for just sort of normal application. And then as you dial up the decay knob, you get that really expansive ambient reverb texture like you are accustomed to on the Cloud algorithm. The mix control hits unity 50-50 mix at around 3 o'clock according to the manual, and they've got a pre-delay control too here, which is really great. You can use it for subtlety, for the reverb to kind of creep in a little bit, or you can dial it up and really get some near swell sounds and settings like that, which is cool. We'll hit on that in the sound samples. The tone control is nice and dynamic too. You can dial it back for warmer, darker reverb, dial it up for a lot more presence and brightness. And then the modulation control too is great. You get subtle to deep modulation on the left half of the knob, and on the right side you get some really intense, like kind of seasick outer space kind of modulation too. So pairing that with the Ensemble mode, which we'll talk about in a second, is pretty awesome for some really experimental kind of like sci-fi soundscapey sounds. So next is Ensemble. That's kind of the major addition to the Cloud algorithm that they did for this pedal. It's not a traditional shimmer effect, but you get this almost like string ensemble, strings pad type texture and effect, which is cool. And there's a setting for a subtle amount of that. There's a setting for an intense kind of extreme amount of that too. So we'll hit on those in the sound samples. The nice thing is you have a tone control to kind of tame some of the brightness of that and the intensity of that. But there's some really cool applications for that ensemble mode too. So enough talking, we're gonna dive into some sounds with Cloudburst. I'm using a harmony silhouette with BigSky. We're running Cloudburst in stereo at the end of my chain, a little bit of texture from the Bondi Delmar, and then there's a portion with the Strymon Volante in stereo and sort of a pan stereo delay. Check out the sound samples as we dive deep into Cloudburst, and then come on back after and we'll talk through some thoughts, some of my opinions about which of these three reverb pedals are for you. Check it out. So there you go. That's the new Cloudburst from Strymon. And we'll start there as we kind of compare these three reverb pedals. I decided to throw it on my live board on Sunday, and I was really happy with it. There's some settings at sort of like mid, decay, and mix points that are just like ideal for a lot of the sounds that I look for church gigs and for ambient stuff. And so I was really happy with it. It really nails that sound for me. And because in that context, I don't find myself using a ton of different reverb sounds, I think that it will probably end up living on my board for a while. I think I'll probably start using some MIDI with it to get some presets going, and perhaps use that max decay function that's really awesome. But yeah, when it comes to Strymon, I think the question is far less about does it sound good, because I think there's so many great sounds in all their reverb pedals, but more about what context are you using it in, what sounds and how many sounds are you needing, and budget too. So with this pedal, you're coming in just under $300, which is great. You get MIDI and stereo, and you get some really fantastic core sounds. If the ambient sounds in reverb are what you're going for, this is going to nail that and be some of the best examples of those sounds. So for me, that's a big selling point, and it avoids a lot of the menu diving and the excess features and sounds that I just don't use a ton live. From there, we'll go to the Flint, which again is a fantastic pedal. I love this pedal. I've bought and sold this pedal handfuls of times, and I'm committed to keeping this one around now in my studio because I just always find a use for it eventually. So for me, the Flint is a pedal that I reach for when I have Americana gigs or alt country gigs around town. I love the pairing of the trem and the reverb. The spring reverb is great for that setting for me, and it's just sort of a all-in-one, hits those two effects really well. So when I've got those gigs that come up, I grab this, I throw it on, and that's all I need. And the 80s is this awesome, massive, like big sounding reverb too. So you do get a few different sounds in this one, which allow you to cover a bunch of bases. But for me, I pick it for singer-songwriter, Americana type gigs. BigSky is a little bit of the elephant in the room for me. It's a fantastic pedal. I highly recommend this pedal to people that are really wanting an all-in-one multi-reverb. It's truly like one of the best iterations of that. For me, like I said earlier, for live settings, I rarely use more than 2 or 3 sounds, and usually it's a matter of a more subtle and then a deeper, higher mix and decay setting. So it's pretty overkill to have all the different algorithms and sounds live, but it's an awesome tool in the studio to help inspire new songs or sounds because of all the different sounds you can sort of sift through and find. So really great if you've got the money, and if you're really interested in having like a dozen different sounds or tens of presets on your reverb pedal, then it's a fantastic option. It might be a lot easier and convenient for you than either of the other two Strymons. So check that out if that's what you're looking for. Hopefully this was a helpful video to show you some sounds and features in the new Cloudburst and help you decide which of these 3 reverb pedals are for you. Please check out some of my other videos. I do a ton of videos on reverbs and delays, ambient music, all sorts of things that are focused on that kind of sound. And find me on Instagram too. I love interacting with you guys over on Instagram. So take care.